afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our panel conversation that we've titled From Aspiration to Award, How FIU Students Earned the Fulbright Award. I'm delighted to moderate this panel with three of our outstanding FIU alumni. My name is Dr. Ashley Floyd Kuntz, and I'm a faculty member here at FIU. I also serve as our Director of Prestigious Scholar Development, where I work with students who are applying for nationally competitive scholarships. And additionally, I am our university's Fulbright Program Advisor. So I love Fulbright. It's very near and dear to my heart. In case you aren't familiar, if you just walked in and joined us because you're so excited about all the activity, the Fulbright Scholarship Program is the U.S. Department of State's flagship international educational exchange program. And what the Fulbright allows is for mutual understanding to grow and develop between citizens of various nations. For U.S. citizens who apply for the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, they can receive funding for 9 to 11 months to conduct international research, to earn a graduate degree abroad, or to teach English in another country. The three alumni that I have here with me today were all selected for the Fulbright Scholarship, and they are here to share their stories with us. On the stage, I have Susana Fuertes. Susie is a two-time graduate of FIU who was already running her own business when she decided to apply for Fulbright. She then spent 2 years conducting research in the Kingdom of Bahrain, where she founded the Forwardpreneurs podcast to highlight trailblazers in entrepreneurship. Susie is especially interested in women entrepreneurs and empowering women around the globe to pursue their business dreams. We also have with us Patricia Garcia. Patricia graduated from FIU in 2019 and was later selected for the Fulbright U.S. Student Award to earn her master's degree in entrepreneurship at University College London. Her venture, UniThrifts, won the Global Student Entrepreneur Award in London and accumulated more than $120,000 in investments from pitch competitions. Earlier this year, Patty joined the corporate world as a product manager with American Express. We're happy to have her here with us today. We also have Hector Peguero. Close. Hector is presently completing his PhD in Applied Social and Cultural Psychology. As a Fulbright Scholar, Hector spent 10 months conducting research on HIV prevalence in India. He later returned to India in 2024 as a Global Health Study Abroad Research Fellow with the National Institutes for Health's Fogarty International Center. So I have some questions for our panelists, and then I'm going to leave plenty of time for your questions as well. Show of hands in the room, just so I can get a sense for who all's here. How many of you are currently students at FIU, Miami-Dade, another college in the area? Okay, great. And how many of you are staff or faculty who might support students? Wonderful. That's fantastic. We're so happy to have you all here. Okay, so let's get started by just talking through why each of you chose to apply for the Fulbright Scholarship. I'd love to hear, what did you hope to gain from this experience? Why did you apply for this award? And actually, Susie, I'll come sit by you so we're a little bit more casual. And we have a microphone here that we can pass. But Hector, since you're holding the microphone, do you want to start? Why did you decide to apply for Fulbright?
Well, my story was interesting. I went to a study abroad program to India, the first one at FIU in 2017 with Dr. Dion Stevens. And after my experience conducting a small research project on perceptions of and knowledge of HIV within the transgender community in my store, when I came back, the Fulbright office asked me, after knowing about the study abroad and what I did over there, asked me to apply for the Fulbright Scholarship. And I was like, why not? I would love to go back to India. I loved India that summer. And nothing, we put together a project that was informed by the first research study on perceptions of well-being within the same community. And that's how I started my 1 year, 12 months Fulbright experience. The idea of applying to the Fulbright Scholarship was to gain more research experience, of course, because my goal was to start right after a master's in public health that I completed also here at FIU in 2021 to lead me to my PhD. That was the bigger goal. And almost done with.
Almost. Okay. Soon to be Dr. Hector. And you know what I learned from your story is when a faculty or staff member nudges you and says, hey, I think you'd be great for this, pay attention. Maybe follow through, because that works for Hector. So, Patricia, share your story with us.
Sure.
Sorry.
It's off.
It's off, I don't know. Maybe we should try this one. You don't turn that one off. This one seems to be working without feedback.
Hello. Okay, perfect. So I graduated from FIU in 2021. 2019.
Sorry.
It's been 4 years. It hasn't been that long. I graduated from the College of Engineering. After my time at FIU, I went on to grad school at USC in Southern California. And as an engineering student, most engineering students will tell you that the dream job is a role at Disney Imagineering. So it was the Thanksgiving of 2022. I was interviewing for a role. I just come back to Miami, interviewing for a role at Disney Imagineering in Bahrain, California. I went through the interview process. And one of my interviewers, I looked over her LinkedIn, as you do before you have any interview. You want to know who you're speaking to. And I had seen that she'd gone to Georgia Tech, also in engineering, but she had done a Fulbright in the UK. And up until that point, my perception of Fulbright was that it was a program for political science students or international affairs or individuals who were not in STEM. I looked at the program. She was also an entrepreneur, but it was only awarded to one person every year. So the likelihood of me getting that Fulbright, I figured, was close to none. This was for a study award in London in the UK. But I threw my name in the hat. I applied. It was about a year-long process, and essentially I applied because I saw someone else who had done it, who had a very similar background that I did, and then was working in the dream role. Obviously, the role at Disney Imagineering didn't pan out, but I like to say that everything happens for a reason. Had I not interviewed for that role at Disney Imagineering, I would have not found out about Fulbright. I would have not had the opportunity to go to London. I would have not had the opportunity to continue to grow my business. And yeah, that's my Fulbright, or how I came about learning about Fulbright. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My story begins earlier when I decided to become an entrepreneur. And as a new business owner with zero business background and zero experience from your family as business owners, it was challenging at the beginning. However, I always had the drive to find out if I don't know something, then how can I do it myself, or how can I find the right sources in order to find the right help? And that's how my journey began. So I started reading about entrepreneurship, not just here in the US, but as an active reader, I started reading about how's the business ecosystem in other countries. Reading about the business ecosystem in different countries and different business incubators, I learned about the Kingdom of Bahrain. At that time, I had no idea about Fulbright. With this in mind, I really want to encourage everyone to keep yourself busy reading about different topics, because when opportunities like this present itself, then you at least have an idea of what route you can take. Before I started reading about the business ecosystems around the world, I didn't know much about the Kingdom of Bahrain, which is located between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. But because I had that experience of learning more about other countries, then it gave me a starting point. So when I decided to apply for Fulbright, the main thing was my curiosity. I would say I had always been really curious since I was a little girl. And my way to find a connection with others, coming from a multicultural background, I always look for ways to collaborate and to connect with people from different backgrounds, whether it's countries, religions, or any other difference that we might have. And that's how everything started. So when I saw the opportunity about Fulbright, which was like 1 month, I think prior to the deadline, I reached out to the amazing Dr. Kuntz. She's the key. She's the key to success. And that's how everything began. And I would definitely suggest everyone to start applying ahead of time. But it really shows you that when you keep yourself active, whether it's reading or collaborating or interacting with others, when opportunities like this present itself, then you might have everything, under your file. So yes.
Well, that's really good to hear. I'm glad that I was helpful. And I love your advice about reading, and I think that ties into the next question, which is, what was the best piece of advice that you received when you were applying for Fulbright? And you've shared a piece of advice with everyone, which is be reading broadly, be curious, don't be afraid to try something new, even if it's not part of your background or something you're familiar with. So those are all great pieces of advice. I'd love for you all to share if there was maybe something else specific that really helped you as you were preparing your application. You can start.
I'll start. I'll keep it short. I think the main thing is to know your why. And this applies to life in general. Once you find out about your why and you work your way backwards, everything becomes more clear. So one advice that I would give you and that I have got myself is, what's your why? What's your purpose? Sometimes we might not even know how to do something or where to get the help or what to do, but if we know our main reason, our why, that's really the motivation and the encouragement that we are going to get in order to do what we need to do. Once you know it and you know your main goal, I know some of the panelists mentioned they had their main goal, you work your way backwards, or that way you also are more open to the idea of finding out and realizing what opportunities are going to suit you better. So that's my advice.
Thank you. One piece of advice, I don't know it's specific to the Fulbright application, but it's a mindset I've had since I was in high school, and it kind of piggybacks off what you said. In high school, during our homeroom period, we'd read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. I know they have them for different stages of your life, but that was the one in high school that we read. And it was always begin with the end in mind, which is exactly what you just mentioned. So knowing what you want. And alongside that, this was advice I got in high school. It was, you never want to do anyone's job for them. And by that I mean, when you don't throw your name in the application pool, you're doing someone else's job for them by automatically rejecting yourself from that potential opportunity. I know applying for a Fulbright is at a much larger scale because it's a much longer and time-intensive process, but I live by that motto. I will throw my name in the hat even if I don't meet all of the criteria, even when I was a student at FIU, and I can tell you that to this point, that piece of advice has not done me wrong. A lot of the opportunities I had growing my business, maybe I didn't meet, say, a requirement because my business hadn't been established for 12 months. Maybe it's been 10 months, but I figured if other people are having the same mindset and won't apply, I might as well just throw my name in the bucket. And whether it's Fulbright or any other scholarship application, that is the mindset I encourage you all to have. You don't want to do someone else's job for them by automatically disqualifying yourself.
I think you guys said it all. I think you mentioned the why is very important. In my case, my focus was my education and reaching my goal of becoming a PhD researcher, not just a PhD, just a researcher, help a community in need or communities in need globally. And that was my purpose of applying to Fulbright. Believe it or not, this scholarship not just opened my doors to a master's degree, but it carried out all the way to applying to my PhD. It's a great opportunity. You're hands-on, applying later on what you learned that year, in my case, research. And again, it completely changed my whole life because I knew I wanted to do something with sexual gender minorities, but not after I completed my Fulbright. I had a more clear view of what I really wanted to do. I think the experience it just takes you to another level. It gives you, again, a bigger, broader view of what you would like to do in a future.
Well, speaking of the actual experience itself and how transformative it is, because I've been a Fulbright program advisor for over a decade now, and every student I've ever had who went on a Fulbright experience said the same thing when they got back. This is absolutely transformative. It opened up so many doors for me, not just while I was there, but when I got back. But I would love to hear more and have you share more about what a typical day was like for you as a Fulbrighter in your host country. What was the experience like? What did you really enjoy doing? How did you spend your time? And that may vary based on whether you're in a graduate degree program or doing research, but give us a sense for what it's like to live abroad for an extended period of time and have that experience.
Just to highlight, my experience was, I went there to the Kingdom of Bahrain as an independent researcher. And that's something that you guys need to keep in mind. Know yourself, because for me, I knew that there's different and wonderful opportunities, and as anything, you can, make the best out of it. But you also need to know yourself very well, because, for example, I know myself, and I know that going to the same place every day at the same time is not me, especially going for the Fulbright. I wanted to make sure that I was going to make the best out of it, not just for my country, the US, but also representing myself over there and also making sure that they also benefit. So that's why I chose independent researcher, because I knew that, of course, I was going to be collaborating and being under the guidance of somebody, for sure. But I knew that most of the time it was going to be independent. So I knew that I had to apply my skills of being reliable, of being consistent. So that really made me really excited, and that was the main motivation. So that's something that I definitely want you all to keep in mind. And now going back to your question, not every day was the same. And that's exactly what really excites me and motivates me. And I made sure that not every day was the same. So some days in the morning, I would go to the university. They were generous enough to provide me with an office and have access to everything there. However, I also had the flexibility to do my work from a cafe or from a co-working space. And I think that really opens the doors for me in that case, because I was able to meet more people, to go to incubators, to go to women centers. So I had that flexibility where I could, of course, do my research part, but also work on the connection. And that's something that Fulbright also looks for, to build one-on-one connection. And I think that making sure that you have your goals set, but also be able to be flexible. So for me, every day was different, and I love it.
So my Fulbright was in London, another big city like Miami is. So my experience, I think I went in with certain expectations of what the UK was going to be like. So specifically UCL, I imagined everything in the UK and London was going to be Harry Potter, like vintage, old-looking buildings. And I remember my first day of class as I got on the tube, the equivalent of a subway here, and Canary Wharf was my station. And I get off and I'm looking around and I felt like I was in New York City. So I was a bit taken back when I saw that, because I felt, I came all the way to the UK to be studying in like Harry Potter-like buildings. But the management, the School of Business, UCL School of Business, was in Canary Wharf, which is the second largest financial district in the world after New York. So it is essentially like Wall Street, the big glass building. So to some extent, it felt like I didn't really leave the U.S. when I was on my Fulbright, specifically studying at UCL. It was on the 50th floor of a huge skyscraper. I think the third largest building in the UK. But my typical day was just getting on the tube, getting to class. There was other Fortune 500 businesses in the building, so we shared this massive building with other large companies. A lot of the classes that I took, I like to say that this master's in entrepreneurship was maybe more formalized education as opposed to the entrepreneurship that I had learned by doing here at FIU. My background was in engineering, and I like to say I stumbled across the world of entrepreneurship while here, and then doing this master's or this Fulbright kind of gave me that structure. So when I wasn't in class, I was applying to pitch competitions, I was participating in accelerators, incubators, and like you mentioned, I won the Global Student Entrepreneur Award for the United Kingdom. So it was just pretty similar to what I was doing when I was in grad school at USC and FIU, but if not in the classroom, just preparing those pitch applications. When I had free time, I'd go into the main UCL campus in Bloomsbury, which has that traditional Harry Potter-esque feel, but that was a typical day for me.
My typical day. Well, in Mysore, India, one of the cleanest cities in India. I can say very Americanized, very European, because a lot of Americans and Europeans go for Ashtanga yoga. Every morning, a lot of rickshaws. I hope you guys know. Right? You guys know what a rickshaw is. That was my favorite part. A lot of rickshaws. And one of the study abroad program students is here from last year. A lot of community service. A lot of community research based programs that I was involved with, from not just my own research, but programs like focus on HPV, cervical cancer, breast cancer. I was fortunate enough, and I think one of the things that made my Fulbright application very strong was the study abroad program that I had already experienced Mysore the year before, and having the opportunity to know already the organization where I went back to do my research, my scholarship. A lot of coffee in the morning, and believe it or not, there's coffee, and chai, a lot of chai. And it's not chai tea, tea is chai. I don't want to call it a struggle, but one of the challenges that I face while on a daily basis was sometimes the language, even though English is the second language in India. One of the other challenges, specifically on my research, was to communicate and be able to interact or connect with the transgender community. Why? Specifically because this community has faced so much violence and rejection that when someone, a non-Indian, comes to the country, they already have in their mind that they're going to do what we call research dumping. Mm-hmm. We collect data and we leave. We don't disseminate, we don't do anything with our findings. And that's what I try to avoid all these years. But I think that was the biggest challenge, was to connect with the community. After now 8 years, I finally, have reached out there to their hearts, I believe, and it's a little easier now to go back and ask for more research or for them to be part of what I do.
And one thing I'll mention is I love that I'm hearing these two unique perspectives on research, which were very community-engaged research projects. for anyone here who is involved in a more traditional lab-based research, just so you know, you can also do Fulbright that way. But one of the things that you'll be challenged to talk about in your application is, how will you go beyond your lab? How will you, if your job is, working with pipettes all day, how are you then going to get immersed in the community outside of the laboratory? If it's not sort of ready-made, each of our panelists here had opportunities to connect with the community. The other form of grant that we don't have represented here on this panel is the English Teaching Assistantship Program. And if you go as an English teaching assistant in most parts of the world, you're expected to propose a community engagement project so that you have a very intentional plan for building relationships in the local community. But I want to talk about that a little bit with each of you because I mentioned earlier that the purpose of Fulbright is to promote mutual understanding. And Fulbright is actually a vehicle for engagement and exchange of cultures. And each Fulbright recipient is sort of like a citizen ambassador while they are in their host country. So I'd love for each of you to share a bit about how you plugged into the local community, how you made yourself part of the fabric of where you lived for your grant duration.
I'm glad you're mentioning about how to plug ourselves in the community. As Hector was saying, sometimes people might think research is just collecting data and then goodbye, see you when I see you, right? So one lesson that I learned as soon as I got to Bahrain, first of all, to all my Bahrain friends that might see this, they're very welcoming, and I think that when you visit a country, you really have to see their perspective, and you really have to adapt. Now, adapt doesn't mean changing your values or changing who you truly are, but what it means is to find mutual understanding and find a way to connect. So, for example, one of the earlier interviews that I did, I met a woman entrepreneur. We had briefly exchanged messages, but when we met for the first time, I was ready. I had my recording, I had my laptop, I had everything you can think of, looking very professional. And the first thing we did was to order coffee. This was our first interaction. We were talking for 2 hours about everything but the data, right? But that connection really built into the relationship that came after. Because this lady, she belonged to a group of women entrepreneurs. So during that conversation, we were able to interact genuinely. We talk about our challenges as women entrepreneurs, whether my own experiences here in the US and the experiences that she had. And that's how I kind of started plugging into the ecosystem. I started visiting the UNIDO offices over there. So I was able to connect with them. They were able to eventually offer me to incubate me as well in their headquarters. I was able to go there and provide also with other women entrepreneurs from universities or youth entrepreneurs. I was able to provide workshops in my field of marketing or social media and things like that. So there's always a way, but the main thing is that you have to connect with people genuinely. Even if your research is in a lab, you can always look outside of it. For example, in my case, I joined a Toastmasters club that really connected me with people from different backgrounds and experiences. I also started I signed up for the American Women Association. Now, the main thing that I signed up for that is because they told me that the American Women Association was actually represented with people from over 50 countries. Because even though it's the American Women Association, it's open to everyone. So I was perfect. This is what exactly I'm looking for. And so there's always little ways that you can really interact with the community based on your knowledge, your interests. So I can say I was really able to get in the community to the point where I also started getting invited to Majlis. So in the Middle East, it's a common practice. It's usually it's open to everyone, but you have to know the people in order to get invited, I guess, the first time. So Majlis is usually, it's like a center. Some people have it on their homes, but it's outside. So it's like a big living room, and people are welcome there to come and discuss things about the community, about education, just general topics in an informal way. And by going there, I was able to meet ambassadors from all the countries that were being represented in the Kingdom of Bahrain. So in some meetings, I was able to connect with the ambassador of Egypt to the Kingdom of Bahrain, to the ambassador of the Philippines to the Kingdom of Bahrain, the ambassador of Russia to the Kingdom of Bahrain. Everybody is welcome, everybody goes there, and we just talk about human topics, like general topics, and it's just a very nice way to interact with everyone. So yes, there's always a way to connect.
So for me, it was a bit different when the Fulbright application asked you how I was going to immerse myself in the community, in the city, in the country. As an individual who was running a business, I figured that a business in the sustainability space, I knew, or I'd done sufficient research to know that London specifically was leading the way in the circular economy space. I knew the Depop headquarters were in London. The MacArthur Foundation that's working towards circularity was also there. So it was, in my particular case, it was not so much going out into the community, but it was more so getting involved with these organizations outside of school and representing UCL, or the institution I was attending, in national and international pitch competitions. So I think it looked a bit different than what both of yours looked like.
Well, in my case, I think I mentioned it. I was very involved with the organization where I was doing my research, not just focusing on my studies, involved with the general community, with other fellows, other professionals. For example, this year, I went on and visited many clinics and hospitals, since my dissertation is focused on medical students and medical providers' perceptions of their work and training and education on LGBTQ people living with HIV. With the HIDRA community, the transgender community, again, it was a little more difficult because of their experiences, but basically I had to go to specific areas to meet a guru, that person in charge of the community, talk to that person, talk to the community. I started going out and begging for money in the streets with them to connect with the community. I also went to several, I think I can mention this, spots where they do sex work and experienced that. And that's how I connected with the Indian community. And like many of my colleagues and people in my source said, I'm more Indian than the Indians. Like I became Indian. That's how I connected.
That's great. That's wonderful. Well, I hear a lot of cultural adaptability, flexibility, which are all things that Fulbright really looks for when they're trying to determine who to award the grant to. Who is going to be able to drop themselves in another culture and adapt and thrive, and not give up when it is challenging or confusing, or when you're just still trying to make those connections and they haven't yet formed. So I really admire all of you for the way you handled that and approached that. I want to be sensitive to getting questions from the audience as well. I have more that I can ask, but at this time, if you'd like to raise your hand, I'm happy to bring you the mic, or Michael's very good at emceeing, and he's my student, so I can volunteer Michael to take the mic to you if you have a question. Does anyone have a question? Thank you, Michael.
What would each of you have done differently during your time abroad?
This one works.
Those are the feedback.
Differently. Not apply last minute. No, I did take some time to apply. I really don't know because again my experience was a little different. I already experienced going to India. I already knew the community. I had a plan before I applied to Fulbright. I think that year when I went back to India, I kind of focused a little bit on the traveling part of it. Even though I did finish my research. But I think I would have changed that a little bit. Less traveling and more focus on my study.
For me, I had some health issues 2 months prior to leaving on the Fulbright, so those were things that were outside of my control, which I think hindered the Fulbright experience for me. But and this is some advice that maybe not good advice, but it got me through FIU, through grad school, and the Fulbright. But I was always, and I guess maybe it didn't quite apply in the Fulbright, I always believed during my education that I didn't need the 4.0 GPA. I knew that if I turned an assignment, with 4 hours to spare, but I was able to enter that pitch competition and win $10,000, that was a gamble I was willing to take. But in the UK, I got my degree. I didn't get a degree with honors. It was just, I got my degree with whatever the honor would be, not distinction. I don't even know how it is over there, but that didn't really quite work. But I knew that I was going with that same mindset. I wasn't going to get this degree with the intention of being at the top of the class. I was going to get this degree so that I could represent UCL, expand my business, and maybe that varies major to major, but at least in my experience, maybe I would have done a little more research as to how the different, honors level work outside of the UK, because here in the US, yeah, exactly. It's very different out there. What is it? In the US, you start from 0 and you work your way up, whereas in the UK, you start from 100 and they start deducting. So it's really interesting. So if you all go on a Fulbright to a country and you're getting a degree where the education system or the ranking marking system is different than the US, I'd probably spend a little more time researching that.
I have 2 different aspects. I'm going to go a little more personal. I have a business here in Florida. So something that I would have done differently would be to prepare myself more from the business aspect to be away for that long, for 10 months. Because you never know what's going to happen. So I had put some people in charge, and even while being away, I had to fire some people, and then I really had to slow down my business. So for anybody that has other life commitments, I think really putting your mind into it and see what you could do in order to prepare yourself a little bit better to be away. So also you have other responsibilities. For example, I'm mentioning these things because they might not seem important, but once you're away from home, they become important. I have 2 dogs, right? A husky and a Pekingese. Now, with me, they were angels. I put my mom in charge, and she's telling me all these things that the dogs are doing that they have never done in my presence. So also look for backup babysitters or backup dog sitters in this case. And thankfully, my sister was there. And also, in my case, and for anyone applying, I was able to extend my Fulbright for another 10 months. And that's something that had never happened in over there in the region. I was the first one. So when it came to my dogs, first of all, I said yes to when they offered me to be able to extend the grant, I said yes. And then I had to find big dog sitters for my 2 dogs because my mom, she was not having it. So always have a backup. Those are things that, small things, but once you're there, you have to manage and try, and you can avoid the stress for sure. In regards of the application, in my case, I was not slacking on the application, but I find out about it late. But like I mentioned, if you know already that the application deadline is coming, give yourself enough time so you don't have to be rushing. Sometimes when you're connecting with universities from other countries, they might be on their vacation time, they're on different time zone. For example, in the Kingdom of Bahrain, their Sunday is a business day. So basically their weekend it's Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. So these little things really take into account whenever you file an application. And also, like I said, the different times whenever they're going on vacation or things like that. So yes.
Thank you, Michael. I have a question for you. You said, I don't know if the sound's good. Okay. You're an entrepreneur. Like this?
Yeah.
Okay. You're an entrepreneur and you have your own business. So how did this year as a Fulbright help somehow your business? Is there like a connection that helped?
You're asking if there's a connection with Fulbright and my business?
Yeah, the Fulbright that you did in Bahrain,
Yes.
and that it helped with your business here.
I wouldn't say it helped in the sense of like financially help.
No, not financially.
Like that?
Like in,
Right, but in general, I think I did learn new skills and new experiences when it comes to interacting with people from another country and being able to share those experiences. So in that sense of knowledge, yes, I believe 100% that Fulbright did help in regards of how I see my business here in the United States. There's also new ideas that came from interacting with other women entrepreneurs and different projects. As a matter of fact, I started a podcast where I interview entrepreneurs from the region, from the Kingdom of Bahrain, and now I'm going to start doing that here. Not just entrepreneurs, but also educators and any leaders. So anybody here that will have something to share, you're more than welcome to join me on the podcast. So yes, I will say 100% that Fulbright experience have impact my business and my knowledge.
Thank you very much. My name is Robert. I'm also a current Fulbrighter from Namibia, and I'm Fulbrighting in the US. Perhaps mine is more of a comment than a question. Just to say I'm quite in awe of the international experience that you've all had. Perhaps mine would be for the whole panel. It just piggybacks on her question. How have you translated your experience into more tangible outputs? Could be impacting policy, could be creating a business as she has, but I'd like to know how you've translated your experience into something more tangible. Yeah.
Well, for me, how I disseminate the studies that the research findings of my studies. I have been invited to different universities around India and here in the US. I can say that not at the beginning, more towards my master's PhD programs. I have presented for the community. Right now, I'm involved in a project that touches on part of my dissertation that will provide the Indian Ministry of Education with curriculums focused on sexual gender minorities health, that there's none right now in the country. And something that I probably later on can bring to the US. As research studies have shown, there are no specific semester courses, globally, including Canada and the US, that focus on sexual gender minorities health. and most of the most of these courses are trainings or fellowships, short fellowships, and that's one of my goals. Create educational trainings or courses focused on the health and well-being of sexual and gender minorities.
So for me, funny enough, it wasn't. By the time I started the Fulbright, I already had raised significant capital. I feel like knew the ins and outs of entrepreneurship. So I came back to the U.S. with something I really didn't think I'd come back with. That whole idea, if you don't know what you don't know, I think really applies to my Fulbright experience. I didn't do study abroad while I was at FIU. My first time officially going abroad was when I won the Fulbright and went to London. And obviously, being in the UK, I got to travel to Europe. And when I walked the streets of Oslo, Norway, and Sweden, I'd walk around and I'd look at these communities and I'd wonder, how is there no plastic bottles tossed on the streets? Why is there no condom wrappers on the floor? Whereas in my community in Little Havana, I'm walking around, I see the cafecito cups tossed everywhere, I see the beer cans, I see the smoking pods or whatever, and I said, how can they get it right in that side of the world, but here in my community, we can't do that. I was already very active in the sustainability space, but more when it came to textile waste. But coming back to the U.S., specifically in my community, I like to say now I'm the local commissioners and the mayor's biggest nightmare. I come now demanding for what I think my community deserves. I don't think we should continue to let it be a norm where people in our community can drink their beer cans and toss into the Miami River. So I've been working locally in my area with the Miami River Commission. How do I say this? There's currently a candidate who's running for mayor of the city of Miami. That's the other thing. And it's partly due to Miami not being a very walkable city, but I live in an area where it is near an elementary school, and we have elderly residents, so they rely on wheelchairs, and sidewalks need to look a certain way. There needs to be crosswalks. I noticed in my street, which I didn't really notice before until I tried to make my community a walkable community. In Miami, I was so dependent on the car, but I came back from Fulbright and said, let me see how I can try to make Miami a little bit more walkable. And I noticed that the closest intersection to me did not have a crosswalk. So naturally, being the commissioner and the mayor's biggest nightmare, I reached out and said, what is going on here, right? Elderly people live here, mothers with strollers need to cross the street, and there's no crosswalk. And they told me, we've coordinated with the DOT, the Florida Department of Transportation, and the timeline they've given us, and that in 2029, and this was 2024, in 5 years, you'll get a crosswalk.
Wow.
And I told them, no, that's not happening. The message that you're sending to the people in this community is that their safety can wait. And I bring back the Fulbright. How can they get it right over there, but here in Miami, we can't get it right? I got blocked on social media, which was a violation of the First Amendment, had to bring a legal team in. And suddenly, a week or two after all that, I get an email saying, Patricia, we have great news. The Department of Transportation we've been able to expedite it, and the crosswalk will be done by the end of the month. And that to me showed me, had I had this experience earlier, had I not applied, I don't think I would have been this community advocate in my community, because I didn't know what was of the world outside of Miami. So the Miami I grew up in, the U.S. I grew up in, is one where the condoms are on the floor, the beer cans are everywhere, the cafecito cups are littered everywhere. So at least twice a week, I go around with my trash picker-upper and I pick up the trash. I'm sending the commissioners scheduled sent emails every Monday morning at 8 a.m. because I think my community deserves better than they work for us, and I think we forget that very often. And my hope, I even started an Instagram page, Patricia for Miami, where I've been documenting all this since I got back from my Fulbright. And to that, I think the tangible impact being able to see the change in my community because I was able to see how things operate on the other side of the world.
Well, when do we get to vote for you? We get to vote for you.
I can add a little bit more to what I was mentioning earlier. For example, being in Bahrain, it really opened the eyes to me that regardless of where we are in the world, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we face the same challenges. And something that came out of it is through the podcast, I have been able to connect people, not just from Bahrain, but also from the US, and also in regards of students looking to compete for pitch competitions in entrepreneurship. Sometimes countries are open to have these applications open to students regardless of what country it is, but sometimes we don't reach out to the right audience, and the opportunities are there, but people don't have the knowledge of these opportunities. So that's something that I've been working on, and I'm very happy that I was able to connect with ambassadors in the Kingdom of Bahrain, because some of the questions that I will ask them is, what opportunities is your embassy offering to the population? What opportunities are there, not just for the youth, but for women entrepreneurs, students? Because believe me, if you really look, there's so many fellowships that countries offer, whether it's from students coming to the US or vice versa. So my goal is to continue to be that bridge into connecting the opportunities that the Kingdom of Bahrain offers, and also here, and hopefully, God willing, to expand around the Gulf region so we can have more access to those opportunities. Thank you.
I think we have 3 minutes and one last question. So I'll let you have the last. Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Genesis, and I was wondering if you guys could share what was the greatest challenge you faced in the application process and how did you overcome it?
Yes, to add to that, the interview. That was it. Exactly. That was my question.
And maybe we'll just have one of you answer so that we can get the last question.
One of the challenges that I got was to get the letter of recommendation back on time. So you really have to send that request in advance. In my case, I think I was like 2 weeks from meeting the deadline, and I was like, Dr. Kuntz, I have not received it yet. Thank God I ended up getting 2 recommendation letters from 2 universities in Bahrain, but during those 2 weeks I was like, okay, maybe I'm gonna not make the deadline. So definitely send those requests on time, especially all of you that know in advance what the deadline is. Just reach out and just as many as you can, because you never know who's going to reply on time or not. And one quick recommendation, whenever you send those requests, make sure to use that CC, label every professor listed in the university, put them all in there, they all will get it. Yes.
Last one?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alan, and my question is, well, I had 3, but you don't have time for that. Like for the Fulbright, do you choose the country or is the country chosen for you?
That is a great question. You choose the country, and then if you're going to do a research grant, like Hector and Susie did, you need to find a research affiliate in the host country who's willing to work with you. If you're going to go to a graduate degree program, like Patricia did, then you also need to apply for admission to that program. And if you're going to be an English teaching assistant, then you apply through Fulbright and they place you in the community in which you want to be. So you apply to the country, and then the country determines where they need you to go.
And then, so what strategies did you guys use to make your grants and personal statements stand out? Especially as I'm a pre-nursing student, how exactly would that apply to me? Is there even positions for pre-nursing students or nursing students?
That's a great question. You can do Fulbright in any field. You absolutely need to be strategic. I want to be sensitive to our next panel, but I will say this, and I will invite you to come and have a conversation with me about that strategic thinking around your particular application. I wasn't able to work with Hector and Patricia on theirs, but Susie and I worked quite closely on hers. If anyone here is an FIU student, you are an alum, and you would like to apply for Fulbright, you can get in touch with me at prestigious@fiu.edu. I'll do a one-on-one consult with you. When you prepare your application, I'll give you feedback on your essays. I can help you select the country, looking at the grant criteria for each country. Each country is very different in what they're looking for. So that's available to you. It's a resource. Take advantage of it. But I do want to be sensitive to our next panel. I just want to thank our alumni here so much for being with us today. And I want to thank all of you for your attention, your engagement, and your fantastic questions. Thank you so much for being with us.